This podcast is powered by PKF. PKF, your trusted advisor in the Hunter for over 45 years. Down to Business acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters this podcast is recorded on.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Down to Business. I'm your host, Andrew Beattie, and joining me today is a man from, originally Narooma down the south coast, made a bit of a name for himself in rugby league, careers with St George Illawarra and later our wonderful Newcastle Knights before joining Widnes in the UK Super League in about 2016. And these days, a very important role working for the mental health movement, and we're going to talk a lot about that within a business sense and life sense, I guess. Also, and last but not least, husband to Amy and a father to two wonderful and I'm sure energetic boys. Welcome, Chris Houston.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me on, and great to be back up here in Newcastle after a little bit of time away, and appreciate the opportunity today.
Yeah, mate. We'll get more on the background, but you know, like you mentioned, that you've had quite a travelled experience in what we're talking probably nearly seven or 8 years now. We've gone to the UK, and tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so originally grew up in Narooma down the far south coast, and around the time I was finishing school, I moved to Wollongong and started a bit of a football career at the Dragons, but I went from there up here to Newcastle for 9 years, and that was a great time in my life, and probably most of my professional sporting career was here. But in the end of 2015, we took the family over to England, and Amy had just given birth to Harvey, the first boy, but we picked up and moved overseas, and I signed a 3-year contract with the Widnes Vikings, and that was a very positive and a great time of my life, but also pretty challenging as well, just bringing up a young family overseas. But
because for those that don't know, Widnes up near, in the north, near Leeds and Bradford and all and the like, it's not necessarily the city of London.
Yeah, that's right. Most of the football's up the northwest or up the north of the country, and Widnes itself probably isn't as pretty as Newcastle, to put it nicely. But, the people there were great. And look, at the time I went over, there was a few other Aussies in my team, but Kurt, who I used to play with, Kurt Gidley, he'd signed at Warrington, and that wasn't too far away. So we had a basic support network there. And we got to do a little bit of travelling as well, which was a great opportunity. Yeah,
from a young family point of view, I mean, as you said, opportunity and take advantage of it. I mean, you can do so much from there, well, much more than you can from Australia.
Yeah, definitely. And, we would look at the calendar, and without a doubt, the main priority was the football, the team, and doing everything in and around that. Still very professional, the outfit over there. But whenever I had more than a day off, we would just look at a flight app and duck over to Spain or duck over to France, and we could actually fly from Liverpool or Manchester to one of those countries cheaper than it cost to get a cab home. So
yeah, right.
Pretty lucky.
Yeah. I mean, some of the airlines over there, I mean, I digress, but I remember times I've been over there and you could fly for a penny. I don't know if that's legal these days, but
Well, it was about 50 quid to fly to France, which was just under $100 at the time, and a cab home from Manchester was probably about that same amount. So we had Harvey then. He was only very small, so we'd put him basically in the backpack and get around everywhere, and it was such a great opportunity. And on the back of COVID and everything that's sort of happened since, you think, wow, how lucky that we got to do that before the world changed a little bit.
And I guess don't get too deep too early, but I mean, what is that? Is that always been a way you've thought about things around take opportunities if they're presented, or is that something that, was a bit of as you said, it was a big decision, but something that was hard to jump into?
Yeah, definitely. I do like to plan ahead and have a bit of a rough plan, but some opportunities sort of come out of nowhere. And to be fair, the move over to England was a year before I expected to happen. I still had 2016 to run on my contract at the Knights, but there were some changes here then, and I did always want to go to England, but it just happened a bit sooner. And the main concern was, how's the wife going to go with the newborn, etc. But we were lucky enough that the parents actually both came over, and Amy's mum, and gave us a bit of a hand as well. But I think opportunities are, sometimes they don't always come along. So do a bit of research, but dive into them.
Yeah, great stuff. So go a bit more on the background. I guess. Well, take it way back when you said you moved to Wollongong, but started out playing, footy down at Narooma way.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually started playing soccer. Mum probably wasn't too keen on me playing contact sport when I was younger, but when I was 10, I started playing rugby league, and I just loved it. I was probably a kid that did a whole lot of different sports. Loved surfing, was involved with surf clubs. Did a range of things, but when I started playing rugby league, I really enjoyed it, worked hard at it, but obviously got better at the game. And with that, I suppose, comes a bit of confidence. And when you're a kid, maybe a little bit more popular and things like that, because I was probably average at everything else.
Yeah.
I just, all I wanted to do was play rugby league. And I wanted to play for probably my first grade team in the town, because NRL was something that I watched, but it was never a goal initially because no one from the area had sort of been on that path, and I didn't even think it was a possibility. And we had a really good local team there at the time of first graders, and the town would go and watch, and I just wanted to be a first grader for the Narooma Devils.
Yeah, right. Big community-centric area, I'm gathering.
Yeah, it is. And, there's a great area to fish, and fishing's a pretty popular sport down there, but rugby league was always pretty strong, and the local team was successful at the time, and that always helps. And my older brother, he was 2 years older. As I got sort of through my teens, he was starting to play first grade, and a big role model, and I just wanted to follow that path.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I like the part you started mentioning about team sport. Whether it be soccer, whether it be rugby league, to me, you've taken the rugby league route, but I know with my kids and even people we employ, a big factor, not necessarily be the best at anything, but to be involved in that team sport and get that whole, what it's like to be part of a team and having to, give and more than you take sometimes, or, communicate, etc. What has rugby league done for you around teamwork, and how you've then, what you apply now within business?
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, individual sports, yes, they're great, and you work hard and you can achieve things. But personally, there's nothing like being part of a team, I think. And you can work on each other's strengths. You can help people with their weaknesses. But when you've got a group of people, men, women, whatever it may be, working towards a common goal, you make sacrifices to achieve that, and then ultimately you do. There's no better feeling, I think, than succeeding with the people around you. And I was lucky enough in my junior career to do a bit of that through under 20s in particular. When I started at St George with the Dragons, we had a really successful team there. We won the comp in 2005. Played with the Morris boys, Bo Ryan, Dan Hunt, who I work with now. But we had a really good bunch. But probably one of the fondest years of my career, looking back on it, was those ages when we were 20, but we were working hard, we were enjoying life, but we got success because we're on the same page.
Yeah. No, it's look, as I said, it's I think more importantly from a children's point of view, like we've had a view that you can play whatever sport you want, or any. It doesn't have to be sport, can be involved in anything realistically, especially these days with so many choices, but always want to make sure there's some sort of, focus on teams, because reality is that's life, isn't it?
It is, for sure. And, I'm mindful of that now with the two kids. I was very conscious not to push them into rugby league, like let them to work out what they did want to do, but any sort of team sport was again, a big goal of ours. And learning to win, learning to lose, learning to support your mates, all those sort of things. I use elements of them not just with business, but with family and with things I do, even with your friendship groups now. Yeah. So it is key.
And how have you, just on that point, how have you gone with the keeping away from rugby league, or not pushing them that way? Are they playing?
So Harvey, the eldest, he's playing at the moment for South up here in Newcastle in the under-8s. He did do soccer first, impacted with COVID, etc. like that, and his little bunch started playing OzTag, and he enjoyed it, so he's gone on from there, and I enjoy watching him. And the young fella, he's only just turned 5, so I think next year he'll be into probably everything.
There's nothing better. I think just watching the kids get out there. But so look, off the back of going to, as you said, St George is where you started. How did the journey come about to come to Newcastle? Was it talked about, or was it just, typical of a modern day business of rugby league?
Yeah, so I ended up debuting down there for first grade in 2007. And that was a really great year of my life because through the junior football career, I was going to university. I've got a Bachelor of Education, and in 2007 I graduated from uni with that degree and then started my first grade career. So that was great. It was a great opportunity down there. I think in that first year I played 16 or 17 games. And then Newcastle came with a bit of an opportunity to come up here. There'd been changes in the coaching staff. There'd been changes with the roster. And I could have potentially stayed at the Saints, but I had a meeting with Steve Crow at the time, who was on the committee in there, and also Brian Smith was one of the new coaches. And there was an opportunity to come up here, and they showed a bit of faith in me and sold the Newcastle sort of way to me, and I dived into it. And I remember I was 21, 22 years old, just looking for a new opportunity. And I had a manager at the time, and, probably even before it was called a spine, he said, well, if you look at Newcastle, they've got Danny Badiris in hooker, Jared Mullen playing really well, Kurt Gidley at the back, and Steve Simpson, and then the Mad Dog was still involved in the team. So there was a really good bunch there, as well as some other good players coming through. And yeah, one of the greatest probably decisions I made. I know we didn't win a comp up here, but in terms of moving up here, getting involved in the community, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, and relationships, as you said before. Yep. So I'll just touch on that point you just said, because I think one of the unfortunate things we see with too many professional sports people, and reality is you get in the system these days, younger and younger and younger, is they don't do anything else. There's no education backup, or no, they have to work or whatever it may be. You'd be one of the rare ones to do a degree. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the percentage is of players that finish with a trade or a degree, but when I was 17 in year 12, I had the opportunity to go and actually go through the junior systems at the Melbourne Storm. And Mum was an ex-school teacher. My father's a plumber, but Mum said, you're not going anywhere till you finish year 12. And looking back, a pretty important decision. So I then started with the Dragons, and I had an idea that I might want to be a teacher, or just education was something that I really believed in, whether it was at school or at work or whatever it might be. So I first went to university. The first year I had to do a bridging course. I didn't have a high enough UAI at the time to get straight into teaching. A lot of travel with football and other things probably got in the road of that. So I did a year there at Wollongong Uni, a bit of a foundation course to give you the skills. Yep. And then started the teaching degree. So it was a 3-year degree. I ended up doing it over 4 years, got the certificate, really enjoyed the prac and the experiences that I got. And it was just so good because it gave me something else to focus on away from rugby league as well. And then it's definitely well and truly helped me with what I do today, as well as stuff in my football career.
Because I think the percentage, to come back to your point, we've done a bit of work on this, it's very low. So hats off for doing that, and obviously now you're reaping the benefits of it. But I think that from a business point of view, whether we're talking sport, leaders, business, etc., sometimes we'll let that day to day get in the way. And from it was carried with a business owner's point of view as to what are the plans, and long days, but who are we bringing along? What development are we doing? Whether it be our people, ourselves, etc. So, I think that's a good tip for anyone to make sure that just doesn't get pushed aside, and we'll get to it. Got to stay front and centre. Yeah,
without a doubt. Not so much just a backup plan, but continual learning and having something to focus on, whether it's a hobby, upskilling yourself, whatever it may be. We need to be working towards things, and I think achieving things in our life generally, but for mental health as well. And glad I got the certificate, and with a bit of help.
With kids now, you don't want to be doing it anyway. But
with a bit of help from Mum along the way.
So, when we talk about some of the skill sets, I think, there a lot of people, a lot of viewers will be looking at, I guess the stigma or stereotype around whether it be professional sports people or rugby league players, etc. But you know, when you look at what skills you've got out of that environment, you mentioned teamwork, but what about resilience and work ethic and that sort of thing? Talk to me a bit about that, but how you actually have now applied that to life after football.
Yeah, I will, and I'll give you, Andrew, just one, I suppose, example. I got a mate works in Sydney for a car wholesaling company, and he was having a really rough time getting employees to get there on time, to be reliable, to wear the right uniforms, etc. So he's an ex-rugby league player. He went to a lot of junior and local football clubs and started saying, is there any young people here who want an opportunity? Because if you can have a good attitude, be positive, rock up on time, follow instructions, work as a team, there's some really fundamental skills I think that any employee needs, and to be able to be relied upon, I suppose, is key. So that's one way, or one example, I suppose, of why being part of a team or in a sport environment can help a business. But in terms of resilience, throughout your football career, I don't think there's too many, especially professionally, I don't think there's too many other jobs where every single day you are accountable, reviewed by your peers, by your leader, by your boss, by everyone watching on TV, by the whole town. So constantly your resilience is tested. But the thing with it, as much as sometimes going into those Monday morning video sessions were nerve-wracking, yes, sometimes you'd get torn down, but then you would have the support and systems to help you improve and grow from that. And in a nutshell, that is resilience, isn't it? Bouncing back from struggles or adversities in your life. And I suppose in sport, you're doing that definitely on a weekly basis, if not on a daily basis at the elite level.
Yeah, well, mate, it's a great point. I probably wasn't even thinking that way, so I'm glad you raised that. You know, we're talking the epitome of you know, one of our biggest sports in this country, and you are. I mean, I guess I was quite aware of what you get assessed on internally, but then you think about the fans, the viewers, that sort of stuff. So I guess that's accountability at its finest. Interestingly, how have you found that then or what's your view on, you know, in the right way, but when you see businesses, you know, in day-to-day life or ones you work with, and, you know, you talk someone the wrong way and all of a sudden they get upset. Like, it's a very different environment, because I'm sure, you know, people didn't mind their P's and Q's when they were giving you feedback in a rugby league sense.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And it's so difficult, isn't it? Because I think the world's changing, you know, definitely in the last 10 years, but even in the last 2 or 3. And yes, people are individuals. And I think the way people deliver feedback or criticism, sometimes it maybe isn't the right way. But it's up to the person if they can handle it, the way they look at it, what support they've got, if they're comfortable. And it's so tricky. You know, like, we work in the mental health space now, and, you know, how one person perceives something can be totally different to the other person. And it's not necessarily that one's stronger or weaker. They're seeing things differently, different supports around them. So it's a fine line. I don't think there's one magic answer to that, but resilience for young, middle-aged, elder people, it's something that you need to consistently work on. It's like a muscle. If you're not working on it, you won't get any benefits.
Yeah. No, I think again, for viewers or business owners, a couple of things there that I think, you know, it was invaluable. Like, how are you connected in your community, sporting teams, clubs, etc., potential, you know, great employees or team members or future leaders for that matter. So watch for that one. I think the other one is, you know, what are you doing around your high performance structure to get the best out of your business? You know, we won't go into detail here, but you heard some of the things from a rugby league team point of view. What are you doing with a reflection and setting targets and accountability in your own business? So really good points. So we talk people. A big part of what you do these days, and no doubt in rugby league, but get away from rugby league, but again, what you're doing now, the importance of trust, and how do you build trust, you know, in some pretty, vulnerable environments?
Yeah, it's such an important word, isn't it? And such an important thing. Very hard to develop, very easily, you know, let down or broken at times. And look, you can't, in my opinion, develop trust without the connection piece. And how do you get that? Well, you need to take the time to get to know your teams, whether it's in football, whether it's your family or in the workplace. because you can't develop trust or get help or give help if it's a secret. And I think back to I've had plenty of great coaches, but Wayne Bennett was one that trusted his people. We trusted him. And if I think about some things that Wayne did to develop that, well, Wayne's never drank alcohol, as I'm sure a lot of people are aware, but he would come to the pub if we had a team drink. And it wasn't like, Chris has had 4 or 5 beers, he's out of the team. He would just take the time to get to know you, to develop that connection and trust. And that way he went the extra mile for you, so you would do it for him.
Yeah, building that relationship.
Big time.
Yeah. No, that's an important one. I think all too often we see in a business sense or employment sense, you got your work life and your home life, and I always struggle with that because I go, well, you got one life, but how invested are you in your people to then expect them to go the extra mile? Because you can read a lot of surveys and studies and stats and show you that remuneration or reward goes a certain takes you a certain way, but I think that relationship piece and that trust, as you're saying, is the real secret sauce, if you like, to get the best possible result out of a person or a team.
Yeah, and look, people have got different reasons, don't they, for their motivation, but purpose and identity and feeling valued is very important. Yes, we need to get paid to live and do the things that we want to do, but when you've got a leader or a workmate that shares and connects with you, well then, you do feel part of the team and you develop that trust over time.
And I mean, there's no better. I mean, it's timely. We're sitting here in September in 2023 and about to embark on a final series for the Knights, and they've had a magic run, but there has to be some of these things you're talking about. There's no coincidence, I guess, as to why they're performing at the right time and why the town's excited.
Yeah, for sure. It's been so good being back up here this year and watching the team succeed the way they have, and getting connected again with the old boys that I used to play with up here in the community. But in terms of the current team, they're playing with that trust. They trust the person inside, they trust the person outside, and I think they trust the process and the plan that the coaches have put in place. And maybe at the start of the year, not that they didn't trust it, but they were trialling new systems, etc. And then you need to get the reps in and then see it work to believe it, to trust it. And I think we're seeing that now. It seems, and I was lucky enough to play in a final series in 2013 or 14 where all you had to do was worry about your job and you trusted the people to do theirs. And our team at that time was flying, and it's such a great feeling. That's what football should be about.
Yeah, look, it's a good point you just raised that, you put something in place. We keep talking rugby league, but, it's topical. It mightn't work first time. It mightn't work second or third time, but, that feedback loop, as you said, talking to each other, building the trust relationships, it's going to be, eventually it will, and you'll make some headway.
Yeah, routine, structure, and consistency, isn't it? Three words, but it's key. You've got to do the work. You've got to put the reps in and have a bit of faith in the process, I think.
So, we could talk rugby league all day, but let's come back to. I'm very keen to talk about what you're doing now, which is the mental health movement. And I'll let you explain a bit more about, first of all, the mental health movement, and then we'll get into mental health generally. So, you said you work with Dan Hunt, you used to play with. Yep. So, talk to me about mental health movement.
Yeah, so very grateful for the opportunity to come on board with the mental health movement probably about 5 years ago. Passionate about the space and love what I get to do every day, but the company was started by Dan Hunt probably 7 years ago, so he definitely made a lot of tracks in the workplace before I joined up with Dan. But Dan started the company on the back of his own struggles and lived experience, and in 2010, he got a workplace injury. He snapped his Achilles tendon, and then a whole lot of other things from his childhood, from his upbringing, some genetic factors. They all sort of hit him like a ton of bricks, and he had time off work. He ended up getting diagnosed with a mental illness, but from that process, he then learnt to not just better manage his own mental health, but went and got educated in the space and started just sharing his own personal story. And for those who might know Dan, he played 10 years at the Dragons in the front row, and that's pretty tough and pretty old school position and mentality. And his main message probably when he started was, if I can go through these sort of struggles, well, it can happen to anyone. So he would share his own story, and workplaces, I suppose, started enjoying the connection and the vulnerability that he showed, and they wanted a bit more. So he got on board with a business coach, started to plan what's called our mental health blueprint, workplace blueprint, with clinical professionals, subject matter experts, and started matching it with everything best practice in terms of, Safe Work New South Wales, etc. So we could develop programs in the workplace, not just Dan's story, but how can we help organisations, businesses, sporting clubs either improve their own mental health or resilience, or give them the skills to start conversations with a fellow worker. And
because the stats, like as you said, if I think Dan's point's very valid. If it can happen, it can happen to anyone. But the stats actually are that, isn't it? 1 in 4 people will experience some form of mental health issue. I think that's the last I heard.
It is, Andrew. It's pretty close. So it's roughly 1 in 5 in any given year, but 45% of people in their lifetime can experience a mental illness.
Yeah, right.
So it is a lot more common than people think. But when you're the one going through it, often you think, he doesn't know what I'm going through, I don't trust them, okay, I can't talk to them about it. And people put that mask or that brave face on because...
Well, it's judgment, isn't it?
It is. And it's our conditioning. Like, we've been taught for years to get on with it, get over it and harden up. And that is a big part of resilience, for sure. But if poor mental health starts to impact your work, your physical health, or your family and relationships, the earlier you do something, the better outcomes you get.
Mm. I don't know whether I heard or read the other day, actually, because everywhere you look these days, there's something around, mental health, well-being, etc., which I think is a great thing. But I heard something the other day that said it always used to be about physical health. Now they're considering that mental health is just as important, if not more important, than physical health. And it's funny, physical health, you hurt yourself or you're crook or whatever, you go straight to a doctor or a physio or whatever it may be. But it's not so much with the old brain, is it?
You're spot on, and it's a great way to look at it, sort of side by side with the physical and mental, because if we get a sore tooth, we go to a dentist. No stigma, no judgment, we just go. Sore back, you go to a physio. But all of a sudden, if you're overwhelmed, if you're stressed, if you've got relationship issues, we don't go to a psychologist. We don't speak to a counsellor. We don't talk to our mate about it. We often do nothing, or we go to the pub, because that's for years how we've been taught to deal with things. And unfortunately, they aren't the right answers. And we know that because a lot of people are struggling with mental health. The suicide rates are as high, if not as high as they've ever been. There's roughly in Australia 65,000 attempts of suicide each year. So there's no clear evidence that not talking about it isn't working well. You just need to have the awareness to know when to do it and have those support networks in place that you can reach out to.
Mate, it's something that's grabbing more and more traction. But we talk about all the time about awareness, but I guess what you're advocating, but actually work in the space of action more than just awareness.
Definitely, and mental health awareness is so important. Like things like Are You OK Day, that's in September, that's changed mental health awareness in Australia for sure. And it's been a fantastic initiative, programs, etc. But it's what's next, and it is about trying to improve our resilience. But even the education around that is key. But you can have a good plan unless you start to do the coping strategies, use the mindset, speak to your support networks. You're not going to get much benefit out of it. So you're right, the education, the awareness is key, but the application in your life, that's the hardest thing, but that's when you get the benefits.
So you spoke a lot about, the various, I guess, stakeholder groups you work with, whether it be schools or clubs or whatever, but you're big in business as well. So if you look at a business sense, a lot of business owners would be, I've heard that and I've got enough on my plate, et cetera, et cetera. Why is it important for a business owner to look at this? And I think you mentioned something before. It's not just a matter of sometimes not just a discretionary thing. It's actually a legality thing too, and a regulatory thing.
Yeah, for sure. So years ago in the workplace, it was very reactive. They call it tertiary intervention, but companies would just have an employee assistance program, an EAP, and a return to work process. And if a worker was off work for whatever reason, try and get them back as quick as they can, because you need to be at work and the company needs that individual there. And probably the last 5 years, companies started focusing on awareness, resilience training, mental health first aid, having support systems in place, having leaders trained. And that's been a big focus, definitely, of mental health movement the last 5 or 6 years. And it's so important to have that. Why did companies do it up until last year? It was for the economic benefits, the moral ones. No one wants to see a fellow worker struggle. Suicide rates are through the roof. Psych claims were probably getting a little bit higher. And poor mental health is the leading cause of absenteeism, and that costs the Australian economy about $11 or $12 billion a year. As of last year, there's been a big change, like you said, in the legislation, where workplaces all over the world, but in Australia and in New South Wales, now have a duty of care to look after psychological health, just like physical health. So they have to be putting things in place and identify these so-called psychosocial hazards. So
which a lot of people, I mean, when you told me, I was like quite unaware, I guess, and I'd imagine that'd be a lot of people in the same space.
Definitely. Even in terms of a mental health strategy, I think, there was probably only 20% of workplaces that had a robust strategy, if that. So all workplaces are like, wow, we've now got to look after this. We've got to take it seriously. Where do we start? How do you know what to do? And realistically, there's a lot of people in the workplace health and safety area that are really good at identifying physical hazards, but unless you've got a psychologist or an organisational psychology background, basically, it's hard to really know what to do. And that's
especially when we don't talk about it.
Exactly. How do you identify them, and etc. So it is a new and evolving space. There's a lot of companies that aren't really sure what to do just yet, and we've got a team that obviously can help with that, but it's a key area.
Yeah, and I think for business owners, I know personally, and what we do in our own business, or what we look to do, is to make sure you got these things in place, because if your team, I guess, have strong mental health, or in a much better position, they're going to perform better. So if you take a very, not selfish, but a intrinsic view of looking at things, there is direct benefit there. Let alone, are you in that category that needs to look at this from a compliance and regulatory point of view? So something to have a look at. So I guess then, if you talk about, MHM specifically on how you, the practical side, how do you work with businesses?
So depending on if they've already got a mental health strategy developed or not, if the company does, well, then we can work with them to see what their needs are, whether it's different workshops, training courses, access to resources, etc. So we can work from that point of view. If a company doesn't really know where to start in the space because it's new for them, well, one of the best things to do is a survey. So if the company's focusing on psychosocial hazards and the changes in legislation, well, it's about identifying them. It's then doing a risk assessment, and it's building the program around that. If the company is maybe smaller, or they've done that already and they're looking just to support their people, again, a survey, when you're best practice building a mental health strategy, it's about assessing the workforce, develop the strategy, apply it, and then reassess and see how it's going. So, if you do that properly, that really helps you target your training, your investment, your resources, not just to what should we do, exactly what your workforce needs.
So it's very bespoke, I guess.
It is, and it has to be. Even within the one business or organisation, like we work now with several councils in New South Wales, and what the white-collar side of the workforce needs is different to the blue-collar, and then you might have people working out of the library, people working in the pool, etc. So all of the interventions are specific to those working groups, and it has to be.
Yeah, good point. Very good. So I guess then... you haven't got someone necessarily on your case like you did in your footy playing days these days. Well, outside the family, mate, I guess. But what are some of the habits, I guess, now that you create yourself or apply to ensure success in your role?
Yeah, I think in terms of personal coping strategies, I'm definitely far from a professional athlete these days, but I try and treat myself a little bit like one in terms of sleep, diet and exercise. If I'm at my best, well then I'm more a chance of taking on some of these other things, and that's work, that's family responsibilities, etc. So getting those foundations is key, but in terms of our team, being organised, planning is key, and then having that constant communication. And the good thing with Dan, even though he's my boss and CEO, we have played football together. We actually used to live together years ago, and we're very honest with each other, and I've got that good relationship where I'm able to have that with him. So that's pretty key. And I've just developed a bit of a day planner in terms of my focus. Having a job list is a good thing rather than probably working off the inbox, but I've just developed a new little planner probably the last week or two actually, where I've got some priority areas, I've got some goals, I've got some intentions, I've got some people I need to connect with, and then a little checklist down the bottom around the sleep, the diet, the exercise and the hydration. So that's making me stay accountable to what I need to do, and keeping me probably on the same page as Dan and the other people in the business.
Yeah, right. So it's effectively, it's interesting how you answered that. I like that, but it's get yourself right, and then everything else will flow.
For sure. It's the old analogy, isn't it, with the oxygen mask on the plane. So often we're trying to help and support other people, and we see this every day in the workplace. Work gets the best, family gets the rest. People start helping their neighbour before they've done one thing to help themselves. So you can't be selfish. I fully understand that, but get that oxygen mask on yourself so you're at the best, and then do things to help others.
Yeah, great analogy. Like it. Mate, what I guess biggest mistake and ultimately I guess biggest or best lesson?
Yeah, probably multiple. Looking back and thinking about life and career and things like that. Multiple little stumbling blocks along the way for sure, rather than probably singling one out. I know just as a young person, I probably only had 2 coping strategies. One was training, and that one served me really well in my career. The other one was probably drinking alcohol. And I still enjoy a beer now, but when I look back, that's probably the root cause of most bad decisions I've made in my life. So trying to get that balance is key. And I think, now it's not drinking to escape reality or to mask other things. It's because you enjoy it or you're having a good time or you've got something booked in. And I can well and truly stick to a plan a lot better these days. So, probably things that I value more than anything is, health, education and, family and fitness and things like that. And if I'm staying true to those, I'm generally making good decisions.
Yeah, good response. Good response. Best advice ever received?
Well, probably a few things. So we've got a bit of a family mantra, probably from my nan and then mum and dad. So work hard, fast and enthusiastically.
Yeah.
That'll probably get you through most jobs, I think. In terms of yourself, your mindset and rugby league, 2 things. So one of my former great teammates, Danny Badiris, he said to me before a game one day, just once you cross that white line, nothing else matters, which is a great probably insight into his mindset. And, I know I'm not playing football every day now, but when you dive in and commit to do something, give it your all.
Yeah, I think I agree with that one, not to take away from what you're saying there, but, we often say around here, like, everyone's got shit going on, but when you turn up, you turn up right,
That's right. And, sometimes you have to put that stuff aside, don't you, or compartmentalise things and then fully dive in. Otherwise, you're half doing this and you're half doing that. Kurt Gidley was another one. He was my captain my whole time here at Newcastle. Again, good insight into his mindset. He used to say, don't let your body tell your mind what to do. Let your mind or make your mind tell your body what to do. And that's probably the way he played his whole career. And I suppose the last one, which I again try and use today, is if you ask yourself the hard questions, you get the easy life. if you ask yourself the easy questions, you get the hard life. So confront those things in your life that you don't want to talk about, that you're embarrassed about, that you're not confident with, and when you overcome them, life gets easier.
Brilliant. Mate, I like them. I like them a lot. I think, we always try and wrap this up. I mean, we could talk. We've dealt some big topics here. So we could talk rugby league today, but more importantly, where you're at now with and I guess, without downplaying your rugby league career, you're probably, making a lot more impact now and affecting a lot more people for the better in the mental health movement. So it's hats off. But and not to, I guess, shortchange that topic. And obviously, you know more than me. It's a massive one. So I think basically the message there for business owners, everyone for that matter, but particularly this podcast aimed at business owners, that you need to be looking at this for yourself and for your teams to get the best out of each day, but get the best out of your business. So some of the things you did go through, which I love. Take the opportunity. You don't know when they present, so effectively it's saying yes, even though there might be a bit of uncertainty or fear there. I like what you said about having a role model. We talk a lot about mentors in this space, which is similar. So, who is your role model and teamwork? Yes, there's wonderful individual accolades you can get, but nothing better than achieving together. So that's a big one that we probably promote in business as well. The education piece, mate, hats off, because as I said, you're paying the benefits now, but all too often we put that on the back burner, whether it be sport, whether it be business, whether it be whatever. So, I'm a big believer of lifelong learning, and whether it be formal or informal education. But I think that's one that people have got to take note, and have they got their own development actions in place, that they keep driving to achieve. For a business owner, look, as I said before, look at those opportunities for potential team members or ambassadors, whatever, within that team environment, whether it be sport or anything otherwise. The feedback you said, I think I'd probably guilty of this sometimes, but giving feedback in the right way, the right forum. Maybe it's behind closed doors, maybe it's understanding who you're talking to and that sort of thing. That's a very big one. One size does not fit all. Love what you said about success and routine, structure and consistency. Haven't heard it put that way before, but that was excellent. And then when we get onto the mental health side, we've got to remove the stigma. That's a massive one. Utilising companies like MHM, to get out there and look at what your business is doing, make it okay to talk about, putting the environment in place that people have some support. I've got no doubt you'll see the benefit. More importantly, for many of the businesses listening or watching this, that, it's a regulatory factor you have to do. It's not just want to do, it's have to do. So look at what you're required to do. And then where we finished, mate, I really liked around your definition of, well, not definition, but some of the habits to form success. And too many people in business look after themselves last, but sleep, diet, exercise, hydration, put a bit into yourself to be better. Well, what we say, the analogy of the oxygen mask. So, mate, some good tips there. But, you could probably keep going all day. But, mate, people that are interested, MHM, what's the website?
Yeah, just mentalhealthmovement.com.au or info@mentalhealthmovement.com.au for an email. But, more than happy to showcase what we do, but most importantly, work with you on your needs.
Mate, excellent. Thanks for joining us on Down to Business.
Thanks, Andrew. Cheers, mate.
Till next time, cheers.